Now, we haven't really talked about the dates, and I want to show you some great features that we have when you add dates to your pivot table. I'm going to take the product and customer field and remove them from the pivot table and put the dates along the left-hand side. Because my data is based on transactional data, I'm actually seeing daily dates going all the way down the report. This is really kind of a very tedious report, and I can't imagine any VP level people, other than maybe the VP of manufacturing, who wants to see what we sold every day. They're usually interested in monthly, quarterly, or yearly data. There's a fantastic feature in pivot tables that allow us to transform this report from a daily report to a monthly report, quarterly, or yearly. Let me show you how it works. The first thing you have to do is select one of the cells that contains a date, and then choose the Options tab of the ribbon. Because we have a date, we're going to come over and choose the Group Field icon. This is one of the 3 grouping icons on the Options ribbon. Because our selection contains a date, we automatically get the grouping dialog specific to dates. You'll notice that we're able to group this up to months, quarters, or years. One very important thing to realize is you never want to group just to months. Excel will group January of this year and January of last year into a single value called January. While that's great for seasonality analysis, it's probably not what you're trying to do. So let's choose months and years. Click OK. 2 things you should notice. First of all, the date field, which used to contain daily dates, now shows months. Over in our pivot table field list, we have a brand new field, a virtual field, called years. So we've now taken 500 rows of daily dates and very quickly produced a summary showing revenue by year and by month. One cool thing is that years field is actually a separate field. Let me take the region field off the pivot table, and I'll move the years field from the row labels to the column labels. This allows me to create a report that compares January of this year to January of last year. This is a very popular report to see how you're doing compared to the same period last year. Now, with the website MrExcel.com, my phone number is right there on the website, and I tend to get questions from all over the world. I remember one day I was driving in the car, and a fellow from Mexico calls up and he says, "Hey, I read about grouping fields on your website, and I need to group by weeks." And as I'm trying to picture back to that dialog box, I'm thinking, well, I know that there's days, months, quarters, years, but there is no weeks option. Well, it turns out that there is a way to group by week. Let's take a look. Go back to the Group Field dialog box. We need to unselect years and months and select days. When days is the only option selected, you'll notice that the number of days spin button now becomes enabled. We need to spin that up to say that we want to group it by 7 days. You then need to grab the calendar on the wall and look to see what day of the week January 2nd, 2007 fell on. This was a Tuesday, and if you want your weeks to start on Sunday or Monday, you need to adjust that value. I'll change it to 1/1/2007 so that way our weeks start on Monday. When I click OK, I have the somewhat strange view where it shows me the start date and end date of each week. However, it's a great way to summarize your data, showing weekly data, even though the dialog box doesn't offer weeks. So if you happen to be that guy who called me from Mexico and I gave you the wrong answer, I really apologize. Now, there's one gotcha with grouping by week. Once you group by week, you're not allowed to group by anything else anywhere else in the pivot table. So it's a really cool feature, but it has this huge limitation. If you desperately need to group by weeks, go ahead and do that. Just be aware that once you've grouped by weeks, you won't be able to group anything else in the pivot table. Because of that, I need to go back and change to grouping by years and months. Well, that's how we can group date fields. It's also possible to group text fields. Let me show you how. I'm going to take my dates and years off of the pivot table and add customers on. I'd like to sort the customers ascending by customer name, so I'll go back to my customer dropdown and choose Sort A to Z. Now let's say that we're in an accounting department and we've split the customers up alphabetically. One accounts receivable rep is responsible for everything from A to G, and we'd like to create a group for that rep. I'm going to select all of the customers that fall in that range. From the Options tab, I'm going to choose Group Selection. I now have a new field called Group 1 that includes all of those customers. You'll notice that Excel has created a bunch of new groups for all of the other customers. I need to go through and regroup the remaining customers. Perhaps the next accountant is responsible for everything from I through R. Choose those customers in Group Selection. choose the remaining customers, and choose Group Selection. Scroll back up to see the top of the report. Now you notice that we have a brand new field called Customer To. This is a virtual field that we just added to our pivot table. We could very easily take the customer field off and just show the sales by group. There you have it. Excel offers many different options for grouping. Dates, obviously, is the one that gets grouped the most often, but it's possible to take text entries and group them into logical groups using the group selection option.